Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network, presented to you by our friends at Bet365. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for another handicapping adventure through the Premier League, then through the rest of Europe, are my co-hosts and colleagues, BJ Cunningham and Anthony DeBundo. Famous last words, boy, do we love this slate. I mean, we just love it. But before we dive into it, just a reminder that Wondergoal is presented to you by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. It believes that every sport should be epic, every tournament, every game, every point, every play, from the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today with promo code ACTION to get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older and present in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. Not only is this a beautiful sport of soccer, but we're getting close to the World Championship of Darts. Keep your eyes peeled for some talk about that, maybe on the Action Network podcast or the favorites, or maybe on actionnetwork.com. I'll give you a little spoiler. Ross Smith at 66-1 is a banger long shot. Ross Smith, not Michael Smith, who won it last year.
Leboff joined this company in 2017. It was an ultimate long con to eventually get darts content on the Action Network podcast feed, and he succeeded.
It's finally here. And speaking of darts, you know who's a huge darts fan? James Madison. And James Madison plays for Tottenham Hotspur, and that's where we're going to start.
Not right now.
He will not be playing on Sunday.
Yeah, he'll be at the darts. City and Tottenham, 11:30 a.m. This is your headliner for the weekend. City is a prohibitive -334 favorite at home. Spurs traveling at +750, and the draw is 5-1. Of course, City are on short rest after a wild, weird, meaningless game against Leipzig in the Champions League. I would have just packed it up. I would have just told everyone to go home. Please don't even come out for the second half. But I'm not Pep Guardiola. You guys like City here. You want to lay it. I'm not saying that you guys want to lay the -334, but it looks like some sort of City derivatives for you guys. Ain't that right, Anthony?
It's funny because we joked on the pod that like Leipzig needed to win by 3 to turn the tiebreaker. And at halftime, I was like, oh my God, like they're up 2-0. This is about to happen. They scored their first 2 shots again, but that did not come to pass. How are Spurs supposed to score in this match? Because like I know that they have scored, I think, every match in the Ange era. Like they've been this great dynamic attacking side. A lot of that has to do with the talent. And I thought in the last game, the matchup, right? Like they played a Villa team that doesn't press, that leaves a ton of space in behind, that kind of plays this insane high line defense. And that was like kind of perfect for Spurs, who were really good in attack in that match. 2.3 expected goals, and really should have gotten more in those first 5 to 10 minutes. 3 goals called back for offside. So the attack was fine. You look at that and you'd say, yes, Spurs attack still elite, even though they've had a ton of injuries. But let's go back now to before this. Since all these injuries really started, less than 1 expected goal against Wolves, who were pretty mediocre defense. And now they lose Bentancur, who I thought was their best player in the first half of that match against Villa before he went down with the injury. He's out. So that means Bentancur, Madison, Richarlison, all out. And that's pretty much the crux of this attacking group outside of Sonny. So I think there's real questions about how Tottenham goes up against, one of the best 2 or 3 defenses in the world on the road, and is expected to cause chaos and implement their strategy and get on the board here. So I think it's going to be really hard for them. I think it's kind of a contrarian play. You're going to hear a lot about how Tottenham, can cause problems for City with their pressure and their ability to play, their Ange ball. I'm not really sold on that here. And I do think that, there's different ways to play this, right? So I looked at City spread, and I think they could, run away with this for sure. But I think maybe the better way to play this, you're still laying -120 on -1.5. That's a little bit higher than I'd even make it, even if you start accounting for injuries. So I think you're kind of paying a tax there. But if you want to get into the derivative way to play this, City to win in a shutout is plus 150. I think that's my favorite way of playing this because they should be able to shut down the Spurs attack, given the limitations, right? Spurs have been such a bogey team for them, but that was Kane and Son working their magic and them always kind of doing it on one or two shots and chances. I think with just Son, it's much harder to pull off. So City shutout win plus 150 is probably the best way for me to play this. If you're going to play it, I do think the Citizens have a few issues with Spurs and roll to a victory at home.
Yeah, I probably won't play it, honestly. I am tempted all the time when good teams get to these kind of numbers, but there are so many underdogs on this slate that I am in love with that I'm going to do my best to not force a bet here. BJ, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because if you look back at what City has done against good competition as of late, there's been some shaky offensive performances. Like if we go back to the match against Arsenal, only half an expected goal. And against Brighton, only 0.8. Even against Liverpool, only 1.3. So you can make the case that City is just trouncing like lesser tier competition. But what I keep picturing in my head, the Spurs trying to press and playing a high line with Ben Davies and Eric Dyer against Haaland and Alvarez and Doku. And I don't see that going very well for them, quite frankly. And Ange is not going to change. He's not going to do what teams like Liverpool and Chelsea have done and sit more in a compact, narrow defensive shape and try to limit City's central progression. They're going to press. Like they're going to try to press City and they're going to try to cause problems, which they may be able to force a couple high turnovers here and there. But I thought against Liverpool, the big thing with City and their build-up play was, John Stones is finally getting back healthy, and he was on the bench, for the last two matches. But Akanji has moved into that inverted center back role really, really nicely and was very, very good against Liverpool, which gives City now that option of inverting how they want to. So I find it very hard to believe that Tottenham is going to keep City out of their net at least twice. So I'll be laying it with City. I'm going to go a little in the alt market. You get City minus 2.5 at 2-1. That's probably where I'll be going with this one. I don't really want to lay minus 1.5 at minus 120 because there is the potential that once Tottenham falls behind, that they just keep trying to press and just keep playing the high line, and this can get uglier and uglier and uglier. And listen, Pep knows that Spurs is his bogey team. Like he's mentioned it many, many times when people have asked him. So I think he might be out for a little bit of blood in this one, especially when Tottenham has so many injuries. So City minus 2.5, 2-1.
Yeah, and they've played well defensively at home against those big sides, right? Like they played home Newcastle, home Liverpool, Arsenal was away, home Brighton, and they have really not conceded much from a chances perspective. All under 1 XG, and all those attacks are better than the current one Tottenham's rolling out. I mean, they didn't even start Dyer last match. They started Emerson Royale next to Ben Davies in the central defense.
Just imagine
I think Dyer. I imagine Dyer comes back into the team here just because he did. If you go back a little bit at Spurs last year, it was Dyer who really I thought maybe had one of the best games of his life against Haaland in the match they won. But I think that there's some real issues with whoever they play at center back in this system, given the difference between those two. The two they're going to play and the two they would normally go. And this is the last match that Romero will be suspended, so they will get him back, which should help. They have the Hammers, could be a good buy low spot. We'll see what the injuries look like come then next week.
Newcastle and Manchester United. Up next, Newcastle minus 106. Red Devils traveling at plus 260, and the draw is plus 275. We're all on Newcastle, but I just really quickly want to touch on one thing. Newcastle 65-1 to win the Premier League. I think if they get eliminated, like outright from European football in a couple weeks, it becomes a little interesting. Anyways, that's just something if you guys want to touch on while we break down this game. We'd say this a lot now, but I would love to meet the person who was looking to bet Manchester United at the spot. I know they beat they by the score line it looked like they got right or continued their get right spell in the Premier League with 3-0 against Everton on the road in a tough spot, but then they go to Galatasaray and choke away another 2-goal lead, and the defense looks like shambles, and they're nowhere near as good as Newcastle, and they're on the road. So I like Newcastle here. I know you two do as well. You can go first, BJ.
Yeah, so funny enough, Michael, that Everton match was the first time Manchester United has won by multiple goals this season. Funny enough, and of course they lost the XG battle. So Manchester United, since October 7th, has picked up the most points in the Premier League. They have won 5 of their last 6 matches.
10 Hog Army.
15 points. Trivia question for you two. How many expected points do you think Manchester United got in those 6 matches?
7.5.
Very close. Michael?
7.2.
7.8. So that's how much drastically they have been overperforming. And listen, we've already seen this match once this season. It was at Old Trafford. Newcastle played their B team, and they ripped them apart with their 4-5-1 press. Like, United couldn't play through centrally them, and it was a time where Newcastle was in a really bad spot because of injuries and Champions League obligations, and that they just didn't have the legs to press. So that's when Eddie Howe unveiled this new pressing structure, and it completely worked against United. They weren't able to play through the build out through the back. They were forced to play very transitional. And again, I say it so many times, when you are forced to play a transition back and forth match with Newcastle, that's how they want you to play, and they will kill you every time if you try to do that. Now, I think we need to address that Newcastle conceded over 5 expected goals to PSG in the Champions League.
Well,
but I'll say this. But yes, it was somewhat of a terrible performance. But I will say the first 20, 25 minutes, they were pressing normally, and they were causing some problems. Then they scored, and then they basically sat off in a defensive structure. And when you give PSG and the amount of attacking talent that they have time and space on the ball, they will kill you. And that is exactly what happened. Now, Manchester United is nowhere near that type of team. They are not able to build out of the back right now. They continually kept turning the ball over against Galatasaray. So that means, again, they're going to have to play the ball long and play a transitional match with Newcastle, which is exactly what you do not want to happen. Even if we go back to last season at St. James Park, Newcastle killed United. It was only 2-0, but XG was 3.7 to 0.4. In that match, Newcastle forced 9 high turnovers and a pass per defensive action of 7.2. I think they can do that again here in this match. And even if they can't, then that means United's sending every goal kick long, which I don't think they're going to do as well. But if United, without Casemiro, without Christian Eriksen, without Mason Mount, how are they building out of the back against this press? I don't see how it's going to happen. And again, we say it all the time. This is Newcastle at St. James Park. Plus 1.48 expected goal differential per 90 minutes since the start of last season, and they just killed Chelsea 4-1. So I have Newcastle minus 155 in this match. They are healthy enough, I would say, in their starting 11 to warrant that number. So I like them at even money.
Well, it's funny because one of the main reasons that they have taken more points than expected in the last month has been Andre Onana, who has been one of the best shot stoppers in the Prem. And I mean, look, we all had Galatasaray on net. Like the game was pretty even, but like we only were in that game because of Andre Onana today. So it was alarming. What's his confidence level right now? I think, United going on the road again after a really tough road trip to Turkey and now a really tough road trip, where they're going to have to play a very physical Newcastle team. And look, like the Magpies' defensive issues in Europe have been well documented. It's something I said I was concerned about on Sunday in our show. And I said, look, like their 2 worst defensive games of the entire season both came against Milan and Dortmund, 2 teams that we don't really think that highly of. So what does that mean? And then they went and had their worst defensive performance. So now if you just take their worst defensive games all year, all 3 of them happened in Europe. So what is it about those trips? Is it play style? Is it the ref not letting him be as physical? Is it actually, I don't know. I don't have an explanation for it, but it's more signal than noise when it happens on 3 separate occasions. So, Newcastle back in the Prem where they've been an excellent defensive team
back
most
at
of the
home.
year. Yeah, and back at home. Like it's very strange. It's something to note. Like if they're going to go down, I think they're probably going to end up in the Europa League now. So I guess they could still get through, but they're most likely going to be in the Europa League. If they are, like, let's make note of that before they have to make a road trip to like whoever the hell they're going to play in the Europa League, Olympiacos or something. Yeah, Leverkusen. But so from the matchup perspective, I mean, I make Newcastle minus 125. I don't really, and I think I'm light if anything because I have actually bumped United because I think they have played better in the last 3 matches. But it's just stunning to me that this line is where it is, given the midfield issues for United and the fact that Newcastle, like, their defense has got problems, but their midfield is as healthy as it's been, and they still have Isak. So,
also, I should mention we have midweek Premier League coming up next week, and Chelsea's going to play United, and that match is a pick'em right now at Old Trafford, which I found very interesting. So,
I think it's about where I'd have it.
I agree, but then you compare that to what we have here with Newcastle. It's interesting.
I'm excited for the next one here. No, we got any Warren Zevon you can play? Arsenal, minus 350, hosting Gary O'Neill's Wolverhampton.
Oof. Ooh.
8-1. 5-1 is the draw. Real quick, Wolves this season. They are big game hunters. There was, I guess, Brentford and Brighton before this. But Wolverhampton, on the season, they have 4 wins and 3 draws to go along with 6 losses. And amongst those results that they got, they had draws with City, Newcastle, Aston Villa, a win against Spurs, and a win against Everton that has aged well.
They beat City.
Yeah, this is a team that punches up. And am I wrong in saying that Gary O'Neill gave some of the big clubs some trouble last year too with Bournemouth?
BJ, how long did it take Bournemouth to score against Arsenal when we had the team total over last year when Gary O'Neill was managing the club?
17 seconds, I believe it was.
I believe it was 7.
7 seconds.
I'm back.
I remember 7.
It was 7. They literally ran like it was like an NFL game where they had the first play scripted to throw a deep ball, and it literally worked. And they scored. It was 1-0.
That was the run where we just kept betting Bournemouth to score like every match,
every game. And guess what? We should probably be doing it with Wolves.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting minus 110. Look, I have said on this show, and I think we've been saying it all year, like Arsenal's defense is like elite. But there will come a time when the market over-adjusts to that. And guess what? I think this is it. Because Wolves have been a Premier League attack that's been pretty much league average this year in every metric, from box entries to crossing to chances created to goals scored, everything you want to look at. They're a league average attack. They're a little worse defensively, and they've settled in to where they are, and I think the market has them pretty well pegged. But Arsenal only minus 110 to score against them. I mean, think about for you to be, we'll say 50-50 to score, to concede a goal at home against a mid-table team, you'd have to keep more than 15, 20 clean sheets a year to actually keep that pace. That's crazy to me. And I think we've now hit the peak of the market on this Arsenal defense after another dominant showing today against Lyon. And it's time to go against it with an attack that we know is good in transition. I don't think NATO's back based on the readings.
Does it matter?
He's still out. But their attack's been good without him.
It doesn't matter.
We were like, oh, they're in trouble. They lost NATO. I mean,
not this bunch, not this mob. They're this is an impressive team. Like this is
they're good.
Look, I think managers maybe we overrate sometimes, but like Lopetegui ball with this team would be a disaster.
Oh, it'd be so gross to watch.
Yeah, so we have but
Wolves team total over minus 110. I'm on it.
I like the money line. I'll talk about it more later too. 8-1. I think it's a good number on. I mean, there's a.
This
could just end up being a 1-0 Wolves win here, BJ. I'd be a little nervous.
I am nervous. I'm flat out.
I mean,
very
there
nervous.
is something, Havertz gets a couple of goals. Very underrated Kai Havertz. We've always been a Kai Havertz podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a couple of goals. That's encouraging for them. They finally get their first big, their big five healthy at the same time. Odegaard, Havertz, Martinelli, although I think he was okay today, right? He did come out, get hurt, but I think he'll be okay. Saka and Jesus, right? The big five are all playing. So, this is go time. Arsenal's got a tough run of fixtures coming up here. I know they have Liverpool coming up. We're going to find out what we're going to get out of this Arsenal attack now. Like, if they don't start turning the knob, I had a conversation about this today. Like, I think Arsenal may be the second best team in the Champions League and maybe more suited to that competition because of their style that they're playing right now, kind of Simeone-esque. But in the league, like, they can't keep scraping by with 1-0 wins. Like, it's not going to work in 38 games when you have two elite teams, Liverpool and City, who are going to be putting up 2-3 goals for fun. And that's my thing with Newcastle too. You mentioned 65-1. Like, as good as the top three look right now, Michael, it seems really hard for Newcastle, who's already at a points deficit, to also surpass them given their depth problems.
Yeah, they need to get healthy now in a hurry.
Yeah, it feels like this is about to be a run for Newcastle.
I am very nervous for this one. This is obviously a bad spot here for Arsenal with short rest coming off the Champions League match. Thank you very much, the Premier League, for making us play on Saturday after playing on Wednesday. That was very nice of you. But what I will say, which is encouraging for Arsenal, is that Lens and Wolves have very similar out-of-possession structures. Lens is a 5-4-1, and Wolves is sometimes a 4-5-1. So very, very similar structures, similar pressing out of those structures. But Arsenal has been an elite transition defense. They, now that they have, Declan Rice with Zinchenko inverting into the middle, and obviously having Saliba, it's very, very difficult to play through the middle when teams will actually win the ball off Arsenal. And very few teams have been able to win it off them high. So if Wolves had NATO available, he could wreak havoc down the right side of the pitch if Zinchenko was inverting. It'd be a nightmare problem. But they don't have him. Also, Al-Nouri is out for Wolves, who has been really, really good for them in the left back role. So
he's an Everton killer.
Yeah. So there's some question marks here of where things could go wrong for Wolves and everything like that. But again,
but they're 8-1.
I've been very clear. I just really like Gary O'Neill, and I really like what he's done with this team. So there'll be other opportunities to back Wolves, in my opinion. More neutral opportunities.
None better than this one. Very few better than this one. So this is a good one. It's a beautiful spot. This is a 10 a.m. kickoff. I should have noted at the top that the City Spurs is 11:30 a.m. on Sunday. That Newcastle United game is 3 p.m. So we have no early game on Saturday morning. We start the action at 10 a.m. Also at 10 a.m., Brentford laying -223 BJ against Luton Town, plus 550. And the draw is plus 350. I think it's fair to say that Luton just have shown more teeth than anybody would have projected. The market's projected of late. A win and a couple draws in their last 5, including one against Liverpool, the win over Palace, which is never easy, and are now over 1 game clear of the drop zone, the bottom 3. Which of course includes...
the relegation battle is so fascinating right now.
I don't want to talk about it.
We'll talk about it. Well, your team's not going to be in it much longer. Don't worry.
All right. What do you think? What do you think about this one? I've got nothing on Brentford and Luton Town. You're leaning towards also no surprise here.
Yeah, I do like Brentford in this match, and I'm going to essentially do a moneyline parlay. I'm going to parlay with Liverpool. I know Anthony has a ton of thoughts about Liverpool later, so I'm just going to echo what he has to say in that match against Fulham. But specifically for this match against Luton Town, I've said this many times, but Brentford actually does profile pretty well as a favorite because of how they switch things tactically when they're playing a team like Luton Town, where they're going to control more possession. They're going to switch to a 4-3-3. We're probably going to see Neil Maupay on Saturday alongside with Wissa and Mbeumo, and that has been a very good attack when they have played lesser competition. Since the start of last season, in 26 matches against teams in the bottom half of the table, Brentford has a plus 18.5 expected goal differential. And quite frankly, this is a terrible matchup for Luton Town. I love the Hatters and everything, but they can't defend in wide areas. They're allowing the most crosses in their penalty area. They've conceded the most expected goals off of set pieces, and they have a minus 11 expected goal differential away from home. And they are going to be without two of their key players, Marvelous Nakamba and Issa Kabore. So it's just a really, really bad spot for them. So it worries me to lay it here with Brentford. I am showing a little value on -1, but I would honestly just prefer to parlay them with one of the bigger favorites on this board. So I'm going to parlay them with Liverpool. And again, Anthony, we'll talk about them in the podcast. And that pays about minus 120. Excuse me. That parlay pays out minus 120.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah.
Also, right around that area is Burnley. They're minus 125 hosting Sheffield United, plus 350. And the draw here is plus 260. A relegation 6-pointer between bottom of the table Burnley and Sheffield United, who are in 18th place. I think the Blades are actually worth a shot here. Given how Burnley plays, I think that this match goes one of two ways. Burnley wins 4-1 or just absolutely crushes them, playing that cocaine heavy metal style soccer that they keep playing, or Sheffield United defends well enough, frustrates them, and edges one out here. I don't trust that Burnley has the pieces to play even against bad teams. I just don't trust them to be able to pull it off. I think we kind of saw it in their last match against West Ham. They should have got out of there with 3 points and they blew it. I think this is a good spot to back Sheffield United. Not many of those come around, and this is, I think, one of them. What about you, BJ?
I like under 2.5. I don't know if this is the spot here for Sheffield United. Their attack's been terrible, just so bad, and they're just getting no production out of any of their attackers. Cameron Archer came over from Middlesbrough and was supposed to be this threatening, pacey forward that can get in behind defenses, and he's not even averaging 0.1 xG per 90 minutes. Oliver McBurney's been their best production guy. He's just 0.3 xG, non-penalty xG per 90. So they just don't have anything going forward in attack. And I think that this match, what you'll see is quite a lot of stale possession because Burnley is going to build out of the back. They're going to progress the ball, try to progress the ball through the lines. But once they get in towards the final third, they just have nothing. They've created literally nothing against all of these teams. They failed even to create over one non-penalty against West Ham, 0.8 against Bournemouth, 1.1 against Brentford, 0.7 against Chelsea. Their biggest non-penalty output this season from an XG standpoint was 1.3 against Tottenham, and they were losing 5-1 for most of that match. So they got a couple at the end of playing against a team that was, obviously plays a very high line and presses quite a bit. Sheffield United is going to sit in a low defensive block, and they are going to dare Burnley to break them down. And I don't see how this match doesn't end in some type of 0-0, 1-0, some type of scenario. So I only projected 2.1 goals for it. So I like under 2.5 at minus 110. I think it's probably should be around minus 125 or minus 130 juiced on the under.
They've gotten 3 results this year total. Sheffield United. They needed own goal luck against Pickford to get 1 result. They needed a stoppage time after stoppage time penalty against Wolves and a goal from 30 yards to get a win. And then they needed a red card to get a draw. Their numbers are far worse than Burnley's, even as bad as Burnley has been. And they're on the road. And I like minus 120 at home against this team that could be the worst we've seen in a long time. I think is a little cheap on Burnley. Do I want to bet it? Do I want to lay juice with Burnley? Not necessarily, but I do think it's a little short.
Losses for Burnley right now.
Yep.
7 straight. Honestly, I think one of the most interesting things is how long does Burnley stick to company? Quite frankly. Because it's listen, I mean, you can say that you have a process and that you're like building for the future and then say this is a great project. But nobody survives losing like 13 straight matches. Just look at Urs Fischer over at Union Berlin. Like he was there for life pretty much the way he brought them up. But he lost 13 straight and you just don't survive that. So it'll be very interesting to see how long he lasts if Burnley just keeps losing. And they have Wolves coming up away next.
I mean, they should have beat West Ham. They were clearly better team.
They should have, but they did it. That's what I'm saying. You can't trust them.
But they didn't. Like, I don't care about that. Like, I don't know.
I mean, when a team's got 11 losses to 1 win and 1 draw, I think you could start caring about it a little bit. Like, I get that you want to look at the underlying stuff, but at some point you got to be like,
the underlying stuff is bad enough for Burnley too. Like, they're averaging 0.8 non-penalty per 90. Like, that's awful. That's going to get you relegated.
I don't think that they should be odds on against anybody.
Yeah.
Forest and Everton now. Everton has a road favorite, plus 160. Traveling to the City Ground, where Forest is plus 175. The draw is plus 225. We tongue-in-cheeked it on our Champions League episode. We apologize.
I don't know
for the motivational spot of the year coming up completely
flat.
They weren't flat. They just missed everything.
Yeah.
We apologize for losing the bet. We're allowed to apologize for losing a bet.
That's fair. I won't apologize for the handicap.
Everton again, BJ?
Yep. Quite frankly, I think it's a bad matchup here for Nottingham Forest. The low block was broken down against Brighton. I know that Brighton had a penalty and there was only 0.7 non-penalty. But, again, from a Nottingham Forest perspective, I find it very hard to believe that they are just going to hand the ball to Everton at home and just say, hey, Everton, here, break us down. Like, this is going to be very Route 1 football both ways. A lot of long balls sending up to the strikers. And Nottingham Forest, quite frankly, going up against Everton is a bad matchup because not only do they struggle defending crosses, but they also have conceded the most goals off of set pieces. That's a problem when you're playing a Sean Dyche team. And Taiwo is out. So that means Chris Wood's going to be up top. That significantly hampers your attack, especially for a match that's going to be played very much in transition. And Chris Wood's not a transition striker. He is a hold the ball up, big set piece type of player. He's not the type of player like Taiwo is. And Sangare is also going to be out for Nottingham Forest, which is a big loss for them. He's averaging the most tackles and interceptions per 90 minutes. He's been an incredible ball stopper coming over from PSV. So if you're going to play, again, a very transitional match, that's a problem with how you're going to stop Everton. And Everton's just what makes them honestly really good right now, Michael, is that Dominic Calvert-Lewin's healthy. Like, it's simple enough, but he makes such a difference to their attack. And not only just with his production and how good he is playing the ball in the air and on the ground, but he's such a smart, astute attacker, being able to drag defenders out of space and provide that space for the other Everton attackers to get forward. So I quite frankly, I think Everton should be around plus 135, plus 130 here, especially if Nottingham Forest is not going to have Taiwo, and they're really bad on set pieces. So Everton, pick them. Minus 113 is the best price you can find right now. I just think Everton's really good, quite frankly, and they're just a better version of what of Nottingham Forest is trying to be.
Everton only wins when I don't bet them when I pass. So out of respect for Michael, I'm going to pass.
Thank you. Round robin, Michael. We'll throw them in.
I think that they make I think that's probably the way you'd want to do it, honestly. It's like throw them in with like some college football conference title games or whatever. Because I hate them so much sometimes.
They're fine against United. It's just
I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I laughed when the bike went in. I was like,
Yeah, I think
I was disappointed with the second half, because you're only a goal out. You're only a goal down.
Yeah.
They really didn't play that well in the second half. We didn't get a Galatasarayan effort out of them, which I'd hoped for.
Yeah. Bournemouth now, plus 240 hosting red hot Aston Villa, minus 106, and the draw is plus 300 here. I think that I don't know if we do it every year at Action Network, but the app, they used to do like an Action Network wrap, like Spotify does.
I think we're doing it again this year.
And no surprise, but the team that I won the most units on, my best betting team last year was Brentford, and then Japan from the World Cup, just because of that crazy run. But I think if I had a 2023 version of it and it gave me a bogey team, it would be Villa. I think I am 1 for like 62 betting Aston Villa matches in my life. So I really want to bet Bournemouth here. And Anthony, you did something very nice for me just before by passing on the Everton match so I can win. Maybe I'll just pass on this one because I want to bet Bournemouth, but I know you want to bet Bournemouth. But since I can't beat Aston Villa, maybe I'll sit it out for you.
Yeah, I think Bournemouth, they underperformed their talent level. We believed in this team at the beginning of the year. We said they were not as bad as they were last year, that they were taking steps forward. Then they went on this horrible run. And a lot of it was schedule driven, and they've now kind of just basically beaten up on some bad teams. So I'm not going to turn the corner and say that this team is all of a sudden fixed. But we can't ignore these dramatic home road splits for Aston Villa. And if you just faded Villa every road match, even though they did beat Spurs, again, they were getting badly outplayed, had a couple breaks go their way with VAR, not breaks, but close offside decisions go their way, and still conceded more expected goals than they had in the match. And so, Tottenham in that match were able to create 2.3 XG. They went to Forest and, were down 2-0 pretty early on, conceded early in that match. Every away match this year has been a complete disaster defensively and a struggle, and they just don't really put enough pressure on the ball. So I think Bournemouth, as a team who has struggled with high turnovers and a team who doesn't know how to get out of their own way at times and just hands goals to teams, at home, catching a half, we bet Forest in this spot. I have Forest slightly better than Bournemouth, but I still have value on Bournemouth here. So give me the cherries at home, and I just really think that this Villa team continues to be overvalued on the road this season, and that this is not something particularly new either. We saw this with Emery way back at Sevilla too. So it's just a difference in play style that doesn't translate on the road. And again, they have won the XG once on the road all season long, and it was at Burnley when they closed plus 100. Again, I think Bournemouth's considerably better than that team. So I'm going to take the cherries at home, and BJ is going to disagree. We're going to have a head-to-head. I don't think I've won a head-to-head against BJ all year. So,
well, we've only done 3 of them. I feel like we don't go ahead. We don't go head-to-head that often. But I do like Aston Villa. I think the price is a little too low on the road here. This is what Aston Villa does. They beat up on the bottom half of the table. It's been a theme since Emery has arrived in Birmingham. Is that why did they just vault up the table last year? Is because they just kept beating bad teams over and over again. Since Emery arrived, 19 matches against the bottom half of the table. Aston Villa has a plus 16.2 expected goal differential, and they've only lost the XG battle 4 times in those 19 matches. And quite frankly, I think the matchup's terrible for Bournemouth. If you are going to cause problems for Aston Villa, you have to be an elite pressing team. Tottenham was first in passes per defensive action. I mentioned it last week. Newcastle and Liverpool gave them a lot of problems. Bournemouth is far from an elite pressing team right now. They're working their way towards it. They're getting better with the hybrid press. But right now, they sit just 8th in passes per defensive action, 17th in opponent build-up completion percentage allowed, and 10th in high turnovers. That is not elite. Aston Villa is a really, really good build-up team, and I'm not so sure that Bournemouth can stop them. So they're going to leave a lot of open space going forward for guys like Ollie Watkins and, Diaby. And I'm not so sure that they are going to be able to stop that. The flip side of it, Lloyd Kelly is out for Bournemouth. That's a big loss for them. and the offensive numbers really haven't been that great for them either. And I know their last 2 matches, they put up well over 2 expected goals against a Newcastle team that was really, really hampered by injuries, and then beat the worst team in the Premier League. That's great. That's awesome. You need to get those points to steer in the right direction. But it's a really, really bad matchup. And even defensively, if we look at what they have done against good competition this season, or teams essentially that will build out of the back, they concede 3 expected goals to Liverpool, 2.1 to Tottenham, 2.9 to Brentford, 1.8 to Chelsea, 1.89 to Brighton, 3.4 to Arsenal, and 1.9 to City. I think we're going to have another scenario here where Aston Villa is going to pound them. And I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw with Aston Villa and Burnley earlier on this season, styles of play.
I think if you're trying to figure out a team, this is more generic than this match specifically. Like, over the course of the season, we just took the raw expected goal differential, and you said, okay, this is the team's true talent. Who do you expect? Who do you think has played way above what we expected this year? Who do we think has played way below it? I would argue, relative at least to my priors and kind of what I thought the league would be this year, okay, United is probably the most below. But like relative to what we thought, Bournemouth would probably be second for me. And then the most over expectation, I did not think Villa would have a plus 0.5 XG difference per 90 this far into the season. I thought they would be closer to like 0.1, 0.2 plus. So I think, preseason, we would have probably gotten a pick here. Maybe Villa small favorite. Now I'm getting a half goal. I know you have to take that into consideration, but I think I still believe in this Bournemouth team enough to back them. And I didn't even bet them last week because I'm an idiot. Plus 120, and they dominated Sheffield. But I do think they're improving.
Chelsea next, hosting Brighton. Chelsea is odds on minus 143 at Stamford Bridge. Brighton traveling at plus 320, and a draw would pay out plus 333. These odds, obviously, and all the odds referenced are from our friends at Bet365. BJ and I are on the same side. You probably could surmise what it is, but Anthony, you are a little cagey about how you feel about this one.
I just think that, like, we talked about Chelsea. The teams they played the best against are the teams that have gone after them and given them space to run into behind. And that's exactly what Brighton's going to do. So even though I'm higher than the market on Brighton still, and I think that there's probably a little bit of value on them, I'm more likely to pass here unless this gets to like a flat one where I don't have to lay juice. I just think that this is a pretty favorable matchup for Chelsea at home to exploit Brighton's weaknesses. So that's why I'm like, just tactically, I think that we've kind of got the blueprint. Like I'd rather catch 1.5 with like a dog who's going to sit deep against Chelsea than catch 3/4 with a team who's going to go toe to toe with them and leave space. So that's just my opinion on like the matchup. I don't love it for Brighton. That being said, like it's Brighton, so I'm not going to say don't bet them.
And I'm going to listen to you. I like Brighton here a lot. These two teams met in that the EFL Cup. Played out 1-0. It was like a pretty low event.
Heavy rotation.
Yeah, ho hum. Nothing to see here kind of game. I wonder if that's playing into things a bit here, because I think that the price on Brighton was a bit surprising, honestly. Like Chelsea, full credit to Chelsea against City. They had a couple of impressive draws against Arsenal, that one right off the jump against Liverpool. But you look around at the rest of their results, it's they did catch Tottenham, but as we kept trying to tell Anthony, that Tottenham team was overperforming and they were going to get caught eventually, and they finally did.
2 red cards.
And it took a while, but we finally were proven right against him. The resume just looks shaky enough for me here that, and you look at the underlying data too, I think there's very little separating these two teams, that it comes down to the market, which it has all season, just believing in Chelsea more than it should, especially in against a team that could beat anybody in Europe on its day. So I don't know. This number just looks way too high to me, BJ.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I think what it is bad spot for Brighton, but a good enough price to play them is how I see it. Because Brighton obviously has to travel on Thursday to Greece to play a Europa League match, and then they got to travel obviously back to London and play Chelsea here. So honestly, not a great spot. But I think the market is kind of overvaluing the injuries and suspensions that Brighton has right now. So it just came out that Ansu Fati is going to be out for a while for Brighton. Lewis Dunk is going to be suspended for this match. Solly March is still out. But if you look at the front three that Brighton can play then, well, they can play Ferguson, João Pedro, Matoma on the left, and Ndringa on the right. Like, that's a pretty normal front three that they would normally play. And quite frankly, I mentioned in the last podcast, but John Paul Van Hecke has been awesome for Brighton since he's gotten into the starting lineup. They're only allowing 1 expected goal per 90 when he actually plays. So him alongside Veltman is a good center back pairing. And even though since they've lost Dunk, tactically, I think we'll see a lot from Chelsea, what we've seen when they've played both City and Arsenal, where they just sit in a very narrow shape and try to limit central progression. And quite frankly, Brighton's probably going to hold more possession in this match. And that's what happened in the League Cup, which was pretty much even on expected goals. Heavy, like Anthony said, heavy rotation from both teams. But for Chelsea, Reece James is out for this match, which is kind of significant for them because how they were so good and build up against City and getting through that first line of the pressure was Reece James combining with Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez getting the ball moving forward. So now it's going to be Gusto going up against, in a lot of 1v1 situations against Matoma, which is not a good situation. Like, you need a good defensive right back when you have somebody like Matoma dribbling the ball at you. So, Brighton +1 is -135 right now. I think that's kind of a crazy price. I think they're overvaluing the injuries in the spot here for Brighton. So I'm going to take them +1 at -135.
Liverpool and Fulham now. Fulham is another 8-1 underdog. It's 3 of them. 2 of them, and then Spurs at +750. The Reds laying -400 at home. Fulham traveling at 8-1. The draw is +550. Nothing here for me, but you two both are on the same side in one way or the other. So, BJ, I guess you can complete your thought from when we were talking about Brentford.
Yeah, I think the spot here for Liverpool is really good. Fulham, that match on Monday was, I don't know how they got out there with 3 points. That was tough to watch. But we've seen this now when Fulham has had to play good competition. Specifically when they played Tottenham is the match that keeps coming back to me, where they were really good in their narrow shape. Like, they were doing a good job of limiting Tottenham playing through the middle. But Fulham is still trying to play out of the back. Like, they're still trying to be this type of possession team. I think Silva's trying to turn them more towards that because he kind of sees the writing on the wall that if they don't become a team that can possess the ball and actually beat teams below them, then they're going down, essentially. So I think this is a great spot here for Liverpool to just really flex their muscle, have their high press working overtime, turning Fulham over many times, and just a Fulham defense that's overperforming, and not much in the Fulham attack still, like we've mentioned every single podcast. So just completing the parlay, Liverpool, Brentford, -120.
Yeah, I think I have an aversion to laying spreads. I just don't like doing it because these favorites tend to be overvalued. But, like, if Liverpool is laying less than 2 here, I love it. And there's a -1.5, -126 still out there as we record this. I don't get it. Like, I get that Alisson's out. That's a downgrade. But, like, Fulham doesn't get shots. So, like, it's not like they're going to face a ton here in this match. And so, Liverpool laid 1 3/4 to Forest. I think Forest is solidly better in a better matchup to defend on the road than this Fulham defense is. And there have been a few times where I've been hesitant to lay it against Fulham, like Villa -170, Spurs closed -200, Brighton closed -200. Probably like showed a little bit of value laying it in all of those matches and didn't. And so now I'm like, I got to stop missing these opportunities where Fulham is going up in a weight class and getting pounded, where they haven't really been competitive in any of the matches. They kind of stole a second half goal against Brighton to get a draw there, but this Liverpool team should roll. They're fully healthy in the midfield and the attack. So yeah, Liverpool will lay it up to 2. I think they roll and start up this title race here as we enter the crazy period.
And finally, in the Premier League, we will talk West Ham and Palace. The Hammers, even money at home, coming off of a win over Burnley, last gasp. Palace, meanwhile, coming off of a last gasp loss to Luton Town, which featured one of the goals of the season until Garnacho scored 24 hours later. Palace is plus 280. The draw is plus 250. And I think that this podcast, we talk about Palace in these spots all the time. Like, this is when you want to do it. However, they're dealing with a rash of injuries. I feel like they've been dealing with them all season. They just can't seem to get their best 11. I think the question here that Anthony jotted down in the notes is who is scoring. And I think that's what you want to look at here is let's close this show out with a bang. I think this is a great 0-0 bet. Like a great 0-0 bet.
I mean, Jared Bowen's doubtful, it looks like. Maybe plays. Definitely not going to play Thursday in the Europa League. We'll hear from Moyes on Thursday, so we'll hear what he says about the weekend. I don't think he's back, but like you saw how bad this West Ham team was. They played a Burnley defense that has not been good this year at any stretch. And they had nothing for 85 minutes. An own goal, and then a Thomas Souček, classic late poach to win the match. But like they created less than one expected goal in the match. And as bad as their defense has been, their attack has kind of overperformed their XG to sustain this winning run. They get, for the season, they're at like 24 goals off of 18 XG. Their underlying numbers have not been good in attack. That's with Bowen. Now you take Bowen out. So I just don't really know what to do for an attack here. Palace is always solid defensively. They're not going to take any chances out of possession. So, yeah, under for me is the bet. 2.5. Don't mind the under a half. The only thing scary is just how bad West Ham's center backs have been. But again, not a ton of pressure on them, given the injuries for Palace.
I mean, it's such. I think it.
Also, you look at like all the goals in these West Ham Forest game. You go back and look at the West Ham Burnley game. Like so many of them came off of flukes and set pieces. It's like there's not been open play, good attacking play in these matches for weeks. And now the best attackers are out on both sides.
Yeah, Danny Ings doesn't really, put the fear of God into you anymore.
I watched the match. I mean, he's cooked.
Yep.
There's just
He'll
no juice in the leg.
He's another Everton killer.
Yeah, no Decore really hurts Crystal Palace here, quite frankly. Like, you can make the argument that he's their best player. He just stops so much going through the middle of the pitch, and that's... I know West Ham doesn't have great attackers going through the middle, but not having him and not having Eze is really hard to get behind Palace in this type of scenario. So, I don't know who's scoring, but I'm going to pass and watch the 0-0 happen, Michael. So I'll round out this of avoiding situations so that people can win. It's my turn. I'm going to avoid this match so you can win 0-0, Michael.
Love it. Okay, that wraps up the Premier League portion of the program. Things are going to be getting quite busy around the festive fixtures. We will be back again to talk Premier League on Monday morning. But before we get to the rest of Europe, a reminder to check out our sponsors, Caldera Lab. The holiday season is right around the corner, and things are going to get busy, but don't let that stop you from sticking to your habits and being the best version of yourself. That is where our friends at Caldera Lab come in. 1 minute in the morning and 1 minute at night can be all the difference you need for clearer skin. These guys are the best going in the skincare game right now, and with an easy routine, they can keep your face looking fresh no matter what your schedule is, no matter how many kids you have, and no matter how many times you've bet Everton this season with Anthony, BJ, and myself. The best part of Caldera Labs is just 3 steps. The first one is the clean slate, which is a face wash to start and end your day. The second one is the base layer, which is a daily moisturizer used to hydrate your skin. The third one is the good, which is an eye serum that you can put on at night to help your skin look tighter and smoother. Plus, what's a better gift than clear skin? A deal. And we have an exclusive one. For our listeners, use the code GOAL at calderalab.com for 20% off right now. That's 20% off with the code GOAL, GOAL, at calderalab.com. Make unforgettable first impressions with our friends at Caldera Lab. Nothing for BJ in the Bundesliga this week, Anthony. Spotlight's on you in Germany.
I'll tell you what, the big tilt is Leverkusen and Dortmund. And I was like, oh, we're going to get a great number on Leverkusen. But then I remembered that they're the best team in the history of the world. So
yeah, it's afraid
the market thinks they are. I thought we were going to get like minus 110 at home, and I was just going to hammer the shit on.
No, now we're betting. Now I'm going to have to stare at Dortmund +1.
Good luck. We'll not be betting Dortmund. I think I would need 1.5 to bet Dortmund. Anyway, I like Bochum. Pick them at home against Wolfsburg. This Bochum team, after being one of the worst defenses in the league last year and in the early parts of this year, they found some really good midfield ball winning, and it has resulted in just mediocre defensive numbers now. They are right around 13th in most of the defensive numbers. They've taken a real step forward, whereas this Wolfsburg attack has quietly been bad. They're in the bottom half of the league, and it's at the point now where I have a very small gap between the quality of these teams, and thus catching a pick'em at home. I actually have Bochum favored, so pick'em +105. I like Bochum at home in the Bundesliga. Not a great slate in Germany. Union Berlin is going to stare at me for a little while, but I haven't been right about Bayern most of the season, so probably should just pass.
You didn't have the 0-0 against Copenhagen?
No. Well, I remember I almost laid it. I was so happy because I went to go lay it today, and then the line moved a ton because Bayern was playing everybody. I was like, not having to bet Bayern. Thank you. And then I would have lost. So
Serie A time. BJ, what do you got for us in Italy?
Juventus even money on the road to Monza. I quite frankly, I think the market is kind of undervaluing Juventus with this resurgence that they've had, because the offensive numbers have been really, really good. What in the past, why we kept fading Juventus and why we didn't really like Allegri ball is because the offensive numbers weren't good enough and the defense was drastically overperforming. Well, that's not happening anymore. The defense is putting up incredible underlying numbers. They just drew with Inter 1-1 in a very boring match where nothing really happened. Both teams created under one expected goal. But this is a match where they're actually going to concede quite a bit of possession to Monza, because for those who don't know, Monza is one of the most slow progression build-up teams in Serie A. They're averaging close to 55% possession on the season. So Juventus is going to be very happy to sit back in their defensive block and just counter this Monza team, which is, quite frankly, if you look at their ball progression numbers and their build-up rankings, it's actually pretty good in Serie A. They just really, really struggle when they get to the final third because they're 13th in non-penalty XG. So I like Juventus in this spot. I think they're back, and I think that they are just being very undervalued by the market. I have them at -134 in this match. So Juventus, even money.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Frosinone plus 1.25, -110 against Milan. I know we banned that team so long ago. They've been terrible at holding leads, so if they're up late, we could give up 3 to this Milan team. But look, BJ and I did, maybe one of the times I was right and BJ was wrong was this fraud Milan remains a fraud, and their attack has 18 expected goals this year, and that includes a lot of penalties. Their attack, by most of the metrics, is closer to 8th right now, and that's now no Liao, who is the entire attack. Okafor is out, so they're shorthanded, and their defense has fallen off a cliff as they've had to commit more numbers forward this year. They have regressed pretty hard defensively, so it's a very mediocre Milan team right now, who, if you took out penalties entirely, would barely be above average in Serie A. So catching a goal and a quarter with Frosinone, who was pretty fortunate to get the promotion, but they have improved their underlying numbers this year, and they're not a bad attacking team. They're right around league average in attack. I think they're going to be very competitive in this match, and I think Milan's overvalued. So Frosinone plus 1.25 against Milan.
It's a brilliant, like a master class in pronunciation there from Anthony, teaching me and BJ a lesson. On to La Liga, maybe some more. Beautiful pronunciations from you, Anthony.
Well, Granada fired their manager because their defense was historically bad. And I was messaging with Avery and BJ today about this Madrid team and what to make of them and how they keep doing this. And they deserve the win, I think, on the balance of the chances today. Created more. Napoli looked dead on their feet the last 15 minutes. But the defense is so bad. And Napoli team totals were always the way. And we got some of those home. And I've been playing these team totals against Madrid a bunch. And I think I'm going to keep doing it going forward until the market corrects for just how bad this defense is right now. They're outside the top 4 in expected goals allowed in Spain. And they don't stop the ball, so they will let you do your stuff. And look, Granada, like I said, like the manager got fired because they haven't won. They have one win in 14 matches, right? They're really, really terrible because their defense is horrendous. But they can score. I mean, they put up 1 XG and scored twice on Barca. They put up 3 on Sociedad, a full XG on Atleti. Like, they've gone toe-to-toe and they conceded and lost most of those matches, but, like, they could score here. So even money to score against Madrid, thank you very much. I'll take that.
What about you, BJ?
Let's fade Girona again. Because they're overvalued, again, against a very, very good Valencia team that has been underperforming. Valencia is a very, very good defense. Second in non-penalty XG, first in shots allowed per 90. And, I think what Girona showed against Atletico Bilbao on Monday was that this run has been a tad fraudulent because Athletic Bilbao constantly kept exposing them in transition where teams have just not been able to do that. Now, Valencia's offensive numbers haven't been great in La Liga this season, but in a scenario like this where Girona is laying minus 150, I won't even close to +1 on a top 5 defense in La Liga. Like, this is a very, very good spot here for Valencia to get some positive regression going back towards them. So I have a feeling we're going to be fading Girona quite a bit as their schedule gets harder because they put up these great numbers against lesser competition. So I'm just going to be fading Girona again.
And nothing for us in Ligue 1. The time to go to our 3-leg underdog parlay. Last week, a lot of times you'll hear us come on the show and say, close.
Wasn't even close.
Last week was not close.
Not close.
I don't even remember who we had. Who did we have last week?
Well,
wait, no. Gladbach was up 2-0.
Gladbach was up 2. Brentford got pumped by Arsenal.
Brentford was live.
No, they weren't. And then we had Wolves, who should have won.
Who did Wolves play again? Oh, yeah.
Fulham.
Okay, so we weren't close to winning, but like I didn't think any of those were particularly like, wow, that team just didn't show up. They got pummeled today.
I mean, it's an 0-3. We can. Once again, it's okay to say you're wrong. And that one was definition.
You had Gladbach +1.5 with us, with me on Saturday. Like that was an all-time hilarious loss. Like they bring the goalie up and then it's like a breakaway in slow motion. Horrendous.
I lost an NHL bet last night, where team won in the shootout, turned off the game, and I found out 20 minutes later that they lost in the shootout. So it's been a fun week for me.
The darts are back, so it's okay.
Darts are coming, and we're gonna hit this one, this three-legger. BJ, what do you got?
Well, let's try to hit the bullseye, Michael.
Hey,
I'll go Brighton +320 at Chelsea. Just a really inflated price here on the Blues, who, quite frankly, haven't been that great all season long, especially against good competition. Brighton, it's a bad spot for them coming off a Europa League match on Thursday. They had to have some injuries, but the market is kind of overvaluing those because they will have their usual front three. They have a good center backs pairing. And quite frankly, the last match where they played Chelsea in the League Cup was pretty even. So getting Brighton at +320, I think is a good price here against a Chelsea team that still hasn't shown their potential yet.
Yeah, crank up the Warren Zevon one more time. Wolverhampton, Wolves, woo! Plus 800 on the road against Arsenal, an Arsenal team that we know has one of the best defenses in all of soccer and in all of college football too. You put this team on the field in the Big Ten championship game, the total is going to be 18.5. But we just don't trust them to score. And if Wolves can grind this one out, and hell, they've been good at it so far this season. They've gotten results against. They've got a win against City, draws against Villa, a draw against Newcastle, a win against Spurs, a win against mighty Everton. This Wolves team is a big game hunter, and I wouldn't be surprised if it continues here. And BJ even said it. A little nervous for this one. He is. So Wolves 8-1. Anthony, who's your pooch?
We just talked about Girona. I'm going to go with Valencia plus 370 against them. This has been the fewest shots allowed in La Liga this year, and Dovbyk may miss again here for Girona. He's their leading goal scorer, questionable here. So keep that on the radar, but I think Valencia's defense turns this game into an even one and should be a low-event match in La Liga. And like you said, BJ, like transition defense for Girona, poor. Could have conceded 2 or 3 in the first half to Bilbao Monday.
177-1. This one. So cranking it up a couple notches from where we've been. You know, we've been living a lot in that like 50 to 85 to 1, 50 to 90 to 1 range. This one, we're going big for you. All right, best bets in the Premier League. Anthony, what do you got?
Wolves team total over 0.5. I think we've reached the peak of the market on this Arsenal defense, who have been pitching shutout after shutout, barely allowing any shots at all. Domination of Sevilla and Lyon and Burnley, and even really impressive against Newcastle. But I think, given the quality Wolves have shown in the attack, with or without Nato, which was really a surprise, they're going to be live to score in this one in transition on the break, and I think they will get one. So Wolves team total over 0.5 minus 110.
Brighton plus 320 against Chelsea on the road. BJ just laid it out why we like them as an underdog. You can just add to it. This is a team that at this kind of numbers against, no matter who the opponent is, not too worried about the tactical matchup either when it comes to Brighton. I'll just take them here. Close my eyes, pray to the gods of Roberto De Zerbi, and ride with the Seagulls. All right, BJ.
Newcastle, even money against Manchester United. Nobody has overperformed more than Manchester United as of recently. Since October 7th, United has picked up 15 points in 6 matches. That's the most in the Premier League, but they only have 7.8 expected points during that time frame. And quite frankly, this is a terrible tactical matchup for them because Manchester United is not good enough to build up through Newcastle's pressure. They showed that in the League Cup when Newcastle played their B team and beat them 3-0. So that means United is probably going to have to send the ball long and play a transitional match with one of the best transition teams in the entire world. So it's a terrible matchup here for United. And Newcastle has been really, really good at home for a very, very long time. Plus 1.48 expected goal differential per 90 minutes at St. James Park since the start of last season. While United has struggled on the road. And this will be their 3rd straight road match as well, coming off a Champions League match, traveling to Turkey and coming back up north to Newcastle. So I like the price here on Newcastle.
It's a beautiful slate coming up for us this weekend. Like I said, midweek fixtures are back in the Premier League, so we'll be back to break them all down for you on Monday morning. But until then, best of luck with all your bets. Hopefully, we're all 177-1 richer by the time we talk next. For BJ Cunningham and Anthony DeBunda, I'm Michael Lieboff. Thank you for listening, and thank you to our producer Noah for all the hard work behind the scenes. We'll see you all again Monday morning.